Gaming is a common pastime of modern society, and it's likely that your children will eventually partake in this activity at some point in their childhood if they're not already doing so. A 2021 survey revealed that 53% of respondents said they have a video game console in their house, and 30% of respondents who didn't have a console said they plan to get one within the next year. To illustrate the chokehold that video games have on people in today's society, look no further than the PS5 and Xbox Series X craze when these consoles were released in 2021. Sales for the PS5 and Xbox Series X were doing so well to the point that customers were having trouble finding available consoles. The high demand of these consoles led to people camping outside stores that sold the new Xbox or PlayStation for hours on end. The sales of these consoles sold well during their release and continue to sell well to this day. With how common playing video games is and how much video games are valued in today's society, it would be helpful if parents were educated on the violent nature of certain video games and how it can potentially impact their children's behavior. Children have very impressionable minds, so it's important that if they play violent video games, an adult is there to help combat the effects of viewing violent scenes. By the end of this video, parents will have knowledge of the violent nature of certain video games, how it impacts behavior in children, and effective interventions you can take to combat negative effects of violent video games. I will be looking at different studies that examine desensitization and imitation of violence, and I will also be including clips from an interview that provides a unique perspective from 3 gamers who grew up playing violent video games. When we look at the top-selling video games in 2025, violent themes are very much prevalent. In 6 of the 10 top-selling video games in 2025, violence is featured as a core aspect of the game. Some examples include the 2 Call of Duty games on this list, and Battlefield 6, which are both shooter games. One reason why this could be a bad thing is because viewing violent media repeatedly desensitizes children to violence. When someone is exposed to violent occurrences repeatedly, it's likely that they won't have the same response to seeing violence like they did the first time. In a study conducted by Engelhardt et al. In 2011, participants played either violent or non-violent video games, and then were shown either violent or non-violent pictures after playing their assigned video game. The results showed that people who played a violent video game that viewed violent pictures afterwards demonstrated less brain activity in the P3 component of the event-related brain potential. The lack of brain activity in this region is associated with psychological desensitization. You may be wondering why desensitization is a bad thing. Well, a study conducted by Draymond and Thomas in 1974 demonstrated that children who watch violent media are less likely to help people who are hurt. Children in the study either watched a violent cowboy film or watched no film at all. Then the adult with the children asked them to watch over children in another room, which was actually just a film clip of 2 children getting progressively more hostile towards each other while the adult went out to run some errands. Children who watched the violent cowboy film took a significantly longer time to alert an adult about the children fighting than children who didn't watch the violent cowboy film. They likely didn't see an issue with what the children were doing for a longer time because they had gotten used to the level of violence that was shown in the film. This illustrates how violent media can raise people's tolerance of violence without them realizing it's a problem. Another reason why violence in video games can be harmful is because it could lead to kids wanting to imitate violent acts that they see in video games. Let's examine this idea through the concept of social learning theory. There are 4 aspects of media that will lead to someone repeating behaviors. The first would be attending to the action being displayed. In the case of violence, it is exciting and action-packed, so people are more than likely going to attend to it. The second aspect is the representational process, or the ability to remember the violent behavior. The third aspect of social learning theory is the behavioral production process, which focuses on how people learn to carry out a behavior. Then the last, and maybe the most important aspect, is one's motivation to carry out the action. Let's look at the idea of operant conditioning. According to operant conditioning, motivation is determined by our environment with rewards and punishments. To explain the terminology of operant conditioning, the word positive means to add something to the environment. The word negative means to take something away from the environment. The word reinforcement means that a person is more likely to complete an action again in the future. And the word punishment means the person is less likely to complete that action again in the future. In certain video games, some acts of violence are rewarded with points or various accomplishments in the game. This example would fall under positive reinforcement. The game developers are adding points or an achievement in the game for an act of aggression, so gamers would be more likely to complete the same action as long as there is still a reward. Gamers are being positively reinforced to act aggressively since they vicariously learn to complete certain acts. According to Bandura in 1986 and 2009, rewarding violent behavior in games increases the chances that one will carry out that same behavior in real life, so there are real-life implications here. If your child is exposed to video game violence, there are steps you can take to ensure that it won't negatively impact their behavior. One strategy you can use with children is called perspective taking. If a child consumes media that rewards them for aggression, ask how the victim of aggression would feel in that moment. Asking them how the other person feels in the instance of violence may decrease occurrences of violent behavior. Nathanson and Cantor in 2000 conducted an experiment where children watched a cartoon and they would either get told that they have to think about how the victim of violence would feel in the cartoon, or that they would simply watch the cartoon with no instructions. Children who got told to identify with the victim of violence and take their perspective were less likely to respond with violent answers on a questionnaire that assessed what they would do in certain situations. The results show that attempting to have empathy for the victim of violence will decrease instances of real-life violence. If you take an example of someone being punched in a video game, you can look at it from two different perspectives: the aggressor or the victim. If you're the aggressor, you may get points from punching someone in a game, which would serve as positive reinforcement. However, if you're the one getting punched, this would be an example of positive punishment because you add something to the environment, which is getting punched, that would likely be humiliating with no reward, so you would be less likely to be in that situation in the future, which would serve as punishment. If the child playing the game takes the perspective of the person they punched, then they are more likely to see both sides and understand the consequences of their actions, leading them to carry out less aggressive behaviors. Another strategy you can use is to tell your child to separate reality from fantasy. Some people who play video games are able to truly understand the distinction between reality and fantasy. They manage moral concerns by comprehending that what rewards them in the game won't be good for them in real-life scenarios. Clement et al. In 2006 interviewed 10 gamers who played violent video games. The participants explained that they don't feel bad about killing people in-game because there are no real-life consequences. They were able to separate reality from fantasy.
Yeah, I feel like, shooting someone in-game, it doesn't give you like the same, emotional reaction that it would from shooting someone in real life. You do become emotionally disconnected from, killing people in these games because it just doesn't feel like real people.
Playing shooting games for a long period of time has desensitized my brain to shooting people in-game. However, I do think that if it were in real life, my brain would kind of think differently. I think where that it's not real and it's just a video game, you kind of put that in a different box than you would stuff in real life.
If your child understands this, then it would be likely that they wouldn't feel the need to imitate aggressive acts that they see in games in real-world scenarios. Another intervention you could take is to have your child play video games with other people. Playing video games with other people may mitigate the effects of viewing violent scenes in video games. Studies have found that people who play with other gamers are less aggressive than people who play solo. Studies have also found that engaging in cooperative gameplay impacts one's ability to work with others in situations outside of playing video games. These studies highlight how playing video games with other people not only undermines the effects of viewing violent media, but playing video games could actually be a good thing in order to improve cooperative skills such as communication.
I think I definitely learned a lot of pro-social behavior from playing video games with other people. Communication skills, teamwork, team building skills, 100%. Especially you could take that into work too. Learning how to articulate your emotions to your teammates is something that it taught me.
Lastly, something that you should avoid doing as a parent is restricting all access to video games. If parents are overprotective and don't allow their child to play games with mild violence, it will only increase their desire to play these games. This is called the forbidden fruit effect. For movies and television, ratings that specify that there were programs that children and adolescents couldn't watch raised children's desire to watch these films. This same idea could be applied to the rating system in video games as well. It's understandable if you don't want your child playing violent games before they are a teen, but once they start getting to that age, it would likely work out better if you use the interventions that were discussed earlier instead of restricting everything from your child.
A lot of the YouTube I watched was the shooter game. My parents not letting me play them too for sure created a sense of wanting to play them more for sure.
Definitely I would be watching videos on YouTube of people playing these games and I would get kind of jealous. And it was also kind of the psychology behind you can't have something you wanted even more. So my parents would take away video games and stuff and I'd be like, oh, really want to play them more now because I can't have it,
To summarize everything that we've discussed, violent video games can create problems with desensitization and the potential for imitating aggressive acts, but there are various ways to combat this. Discussing perspective taking, separating reality from fantasy, and playing video games with other people are all effective ways to prevent media from negatively impacting behavior without restricting games from your child.